going to have a panel, and it's going to be based on whatever you want, probably mostly on what the people have spoken to tonight. You can ask questions about coronavirus if you like. You can ask questions of anything that you learned today that you're curious about. And we have some people that are going to be on that panel. I'd like to invite them down right now and introduce them so that you'll understand why the children the background. Dr. Reeves will be on this panel. Dr. Wolf, Dr. Don Huber. How many of you remember Dr. Don Huber? Now Wilson, the owner, operator of KBGN, the oldest Christian radio station in Idaho. Senator Kristen Zito. So you've got a great panel here that you can ask questions of. You can ask questions about, as I said, coronavirus or other things that we've talked about. Okay. So I don't know how you guys want to look at it. You want to make a statement first about what you're thinking. You had, oh, I'm so sorry. Nelson's son is going to talk tomorrow about a cyber attack that happened on their radio station last fall, where he was actually sitting at his desk and started watching the cursor on his monitor move and start taking files out of folders. So they're going to talk about that. And Nels is probably one of, I know some wonderful people. He's one of the most principled people I've ever met. He's the only one that I allowed to sit in my seat when I had to be gone during the legislative session, besides from him, that I knew would stand on principle and do not give in. So, Ron, do you want to be on the panel too?
No, no,
okay, all right. No. Okay, so anyway, I don't know if any of you want to make a statement and to get them started, or if you have questions.
I have a statement. I just want to congratulate everybody for being here. You know, this is a great, you're an exceptional group for being here.
We are. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as dumb questions. Just don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm going to start it out because I do have a question. I don't understand. I have chosen not to get the shot, whatever you want to call it, whatever. I've decided not to. I have several conditions that I don't think it would be wise for me to take it anyway. But what I don't understand, and I don't know if the doctors can answer this, or a legislator, but I don't understand how on TV they can advertise different medicine that you should take for different conditions, right? Because of some of the conditions that I had, I was put on several medications over the years. I had reactions to all of them, and within a few years, all of them were on the 1-800-BAD-DRUG list. The question that I have for you is, how can they go through years and years of study, double-blind tests, and all that they go through to be approved, and then end up on the 1-800-BAD-DRUG list? And now they're advertising other cures, and they have this long disclaimer afterwards that you can get anything from the hangover to death, and they get off their hook. And then they give us this shot that's been out maybe a year without any double-blind tests, nothing. I'm criticized because I'm concerned about taking the shot because of my immune system. And yet these other medicines that have been gone through all kinds of rigorous studies and double-blind tests end up on the 800 backlog list. How can they say that on the shot that there's no side effects and it's completely safe? How do they know that?
So that's actually a very good question. One thing with the shot that's really dangerous is what's called pathogenic priming, meaning that your immune system gets primed towards an agent that you get injected by. So your immune system is going to have a heightened alert. So you get this I call it a jab or transfer or.
What is it? Just a little tiny? Is that why they call it a jab? Or the little tiny? Is it just a little needle?
Well, the reason we're saying this is not a vaccination.
Okay.
It's not a virus that you're getting or something that you can build an immune system against. It is genetic manipulation. That's what it is. But what it does is that it heightens, it makes immune system focus on these agent that is being introduced. And so next time that the body gets an introduced or exposed to similar spike protein, the immune system is at heightened alert. So it actually, you will have a worse reaction to it the second time you're exposed to this so-called virus or these spike proteins. And the question also has been in regards to the spike proteins, so we're afraid of the virus, so we're then injecting a vaccine or injecting something that's spitting out more of the spike proteins. But in essence, it's the spike proteins that trigger these inflammatory reactions and trigger that heightened immune system alert. So with this virus, with this vaccine, they skipped animal testings and they kind of jumped into human testing. And the reason why they skipped animal testing is because all the testing in the past have failed on animals. It was more either the animals died or they were deathly sick, after getting the vaccine that we're testing that related to any kind of corona type of virus. So in order for them to be able to get this to the market, they needed to skip the animal testing because that would show the danger. And we are a larger being. We're a more complex system, so we will not react as quickly. So they could pretty much hide, the reactions, and so they think. But still, we're seeing the reactions from people in regard to what this does.
So they could get a reaction months later.
Month later, it can be 5 years later. We have no idea. So it's kind of like a time bomb, because of this pathogenic priming aspect, where you have this kind of the immune system response that is heightened and it's kind of waiting for the next introduction, and then it will react quickly, and that's where you're seeing a lot of the myocarditis. You're seeing a lot of the kind of endothelial lining reactions for inflammation. And endothelial, you have blood vessels, you have this kind of lining, and then that gets inflamed, and that will then kind of create clotting and also loss of oxygen, and so you have a lot of reactions that way. So the question, why are they allowed to do this when you have all these other drugs that's gone through millions and millions of dollars and years of testing, and they're still not safe? So you have to look at how research is done. Is that a company that's spending X amount of dollars in order to be able to move a product onto the market is going to set up the studies in a way to make sure that this product will look like it's in the best possible light, and then also kind of hide the data in a way. So
it seems like it's complicit. The pharmaceutical companies are complicit with. I'm wondering if it's with the politicians and with the different organizations that govern, like medical things. Go ahead.
Well, first I want to clarify, I'm not a politician.
I wasn't talking about.
No, I know.
She's a freedom fighter.
But I think what the bottom line is here is we have the medical knowledge. We've listened to it today. We have the proof. Someone who lives just down the road from me will never walk again. within hours of the time they got Johnson & Johnson shot, they'll be paralyzed for the rest of their life.
What did the doctor say?
It was his fault, of course, for whatever reason. I mean, they're not going to say that it was a vaccine because the family asked that and hasn't been told that. But what it boils down to is this: it doesn't really matter what the truth is. It doesn't really matter how many of these good people here offer the truth and go out there and say it. What matters is what people are willing to believe and what they're willing to buy into. And like in your case, in my case, and a lot of us who just are not going to get that shot, we've got to be strong. And we've got to take the hits no matter what comes after us and no matter what happens, no matter what's said, no matter how we're degraded, looked down on. We've got to stand for the truth, because two things are going to happen from that. Number one, somebody somewhere is going to take courage from the fact that you were willing to take a stand. Someone takes courage from the fact that these good people here, these good doctors that are willing to speak the truth. Somebody somewhere's life is going to be safe because these people were willing to take up and take a stand. And that's what it comes down to. We can argue the truth all day long, but it comes down to what people are going to believe and what they are going to do out of fear.
And what you said about us being strong, one of the things we've been telling the students for years is that it's the people that have to stand strong, because if we don't stand strong, we're not going to have people in these professions and in the halls of Congress and in our legislatures that will do the right thing, because they're bought and sold.
Right, well, and we do, and that's why it's important. I believe, we focus so much on like the presidency and on Congress and all of these entities that are so far removed from us. But the most important focus that we have to have is locally. That's right. And we kind of missed the boat on that, but we need to, we're behind the curve, we're behind the gun on that. We need to focus locally. We need to know how many adults in this room know who their representatives are on a state level. And this room is exceptional because of the people that are here, but I can go into the grocery store and someone will ask me what I do, and I say, I'm a state senator, and they'll say, do you go to Washington, D.C.? And I'll say, no, I'm your state senator here. And they say, well, what do you do? And you can laugh, but that happens more times than you would really think. And it's criminal on our part as citizens to not really know what's going on, because these local decisions have the most immediate impact on our lives, because we're the people that are supposed to stand up for your rights. We're the people that are supposed to make sure that this kind of garbage doesn't happen in our state.
But we need an informed citizenship.
We need an informed citizenship, and then we need elected officials who will actually take a stand for the right.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson, do you have any problems with censorship over the radio? Because like it's on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. Do you have problems with that on the radio as well?
The only censorship that we have is something that basically we ignore, and it relates to who we can hire. We're a Christian radio station, and there are certain individuals whom I will never hire. Fortunately, that's never been challenged. And so I haven't had to have some of the fight like some of these other folks here have had to do. We are a Christian radio station. We're unashamedly a Christian radio station. We are a Christian radio station because we believe that it is people's hearts that determine what they do. It's people's hearts that determine what they think, how they vote, and everything else. While we do some political programming, some of these fine folks have been guests on Liz's program. It is not that which actually changes this whole complex thing we have going on in the world. If you don't change people's hearts, then people continue to do stupid things. Now, Dr. Wool encouraged you young people to be, she didn't put it this way, but I'll put it this way, connected to God. God is the creator. He's the one who made us. He's the one who made these systems that work. He's the one who gives scientists the ability to discover and do things. The shame is that there are too many evil people who don't even realize they're evil because they are not connected with the creator of the universe. They need to be connected. I believe that connection comes through Jesus Christ, and that's what we teach. We have a news system, which is American Family Radio News. It's a Christian organization. It broadcasts a lot of the good things that have been talked about here already. We're unashamedly doing that. They do a pretty good job of enlightening people about some of these things that have been addressed here. Unfortunately, they're just one voice, and we run the newscast multiple times a day. But you young people have been told to get out there and keep doing it. Keep doing it in spite of what people do. Keep doing it in spite of what people say. Keep doing it when it gets real hard. And that's one of the things I've thought about lately. Our form of government is one that is being destroyed by our ignoring it. It's being destroyed by the fact that very few pay attention to the Constitution. The Constitution is not hard to understand. We have a wonderful form of government that God has blessed us with. Bottom line is this: God gave authorities the job of honoring those who do good and punishing those who do evil. That's their basic function. And when they get into all the other things that they do, they're actually stepping out of line from what God intends. And there are a whole bunch of things they can do, but their basic function is to honor those who do good and punish those who do evil. Now we have a government that's honoring those who do evil and in many cases punishing those who do good, and it's turned around. Your voices have to keep, you have to stay out there. We do it by radio.
Joanne.
Yes. I'm wondering where the idea came to make anybody who treats you for COVID not liable. They have immunity. Did that come through the legislature, or did that come through the governor? Did it come through the federal government?
Well, the bill that was passed during the special session, and I brought a copy of it. It doesn't talk about treating. It just talks basically about transmission. And I got a copy of it here if anybody wants to read it, or it doesn't say that. I believe that the liability, and the doctor here can tell me if I'm wrong, that's federal, and I think put the Reagan administration put that into effect, that the companies that manufacture the vaccines can't be held liable. And another interesting thing to note is that when a company creates any kind of a medication, they set up a trust fund, and they will put money into that trust fund. When they start to pay that whatever medication it is, they have the trust fund available to take care of losses.
When they get on the 1-800-BAD-DRUG.
Yeah, when they get yeah. So this doesn't have to do with doctors treating patients with COVID. It has to do with liability. So if someone comes in your business or whatever and contracts COVID, they can't, you're not liable.
Elizabeth, I have a comment I'd like to share. We can learn a lot from studying history, and pay attention to what happened to Nelson Mandela when he was in South Africa. He was in prison. My understanding, and I never spoke with Mr. Mandela, my understanding is that he would be tortured on a regular basis. And what he did is, when the man came to torture him, he had learned the man's first name, and he said, John, or whatever. John, just so you know, I do not consent to this behavior. I care about you as a human being, but you do not have my permission to torture me. And he did that every day for years when he was being tortured. I think there's a big lesson there. There's a mismatch. The state has more guns, the state has more weapons. So you can be told something which is unconstitutional. You must get the shot or you'll be fired. It's unconstitutional. If you had 10 years to wait to the Supreme Court, you would win. So in the interim, just don't consent. Just let the person know who's violating your rights. Do not consent. Do not waive your rights. That's an essential component. You know your rights first, but then don't consent to behavior which is unconstitutional or inhumane.
And it may not be easy. You know, I'm one of those that is very sad because I will have to see my grandchildren because they live in another country. I've made a decision and I'm going to stand by it, but it makes me very sad. And I can certainly understand why some grandparents do this. So,
just follow up if I could. Is it unconstitutional to tell you that I cannot get on a plane without I've had a vaccination?
Well, now it's flipped around. Now the airlines are concerned about transporting people who have been vaccinated because of the increased risk of stroke and clots. There's the pendulum swinging because the airline is responsible for the passengers who are having medical challenges on the plane.
My nephew is a missionary to Thailand. Just this past week, he and his daughter went back to Thailand. His wife had been there over this last year. He had gotten the shot, the not vaccine. And it was, I think, a week, maybe two later, that he got the virus. And then he had to wait in California in order to be able to fly back with his daughter. When they get to Thailand, then they have to be quarantined in a hotel or whatever for, I think, 14 days or whatever before they can go back. The reason I mentioned it is because it's a joke. And it's so obvious, it's a joke. And I'm not afraid to say it. Why do we have to act like things that are lies are okay? Now, there are medical things that have been discussed which are true about it, but the overall scenario is this is a joke which has been used to ruin our economy, and it's a joke that has been used to cause us to dislike one another. I just read today that some kids went to a prom, and the kids that didn't have the vaccine had numbers on their hands that they had to raise up every once in a while for some dumb reason. What else can that be other than to just be peer pressure? We don't need peer pressure. God gave us brains. That's why I was talking before about people. They're not brain dead. God gave us brains, and he gave us hearts that interface with those brains. And besides that, we are spiritual beings who have a body. We're not just animals. And we need to use the brain God gave us to think and stand there on the truth. I'm so tired of what I have heard over this whole thing of this non-virus. This Mr. Fauci is a lying fool. And I'm not afraid to say it. Why doesn't somebody just say it? I believe he has an ulterior motive. I don't know exactly what it is, but it seems like it's killing people. That's what it seems like to me. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The thing is, this is a very emotional thing. You like to express the feelings. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I actually have a question that came for the last two speakers. Our previous speaker, if I remember correctly, said that she was very firmly in transmission after receiving the COVID shot. Is that correct?
That's what we're starting to sense, yes. And oh, by the way, there seems to be some documentation out. It says only half of the people that are getting the shot actually have the ingredients in it, which is why the levels of reactions are lower, because they're actually in it, or you're actually in the clinical trial.
That was the focal point of my question. I was going to refer back to what Dr. Witt said when he mentioned that if you were to give out the polio shot, it had a small portion of the polio virus, training your immune system to fight back against it. But the COVID shot doesn't have that, if I remember correctly. And if that's the case, how would there be transmission after receiving the COVID shot? That was the focal point of my question.
Okay, so it's mRNA and it's gene therapy, and that mRNA codes for the spike protein, not the whole virus. So we've been told it's just the spike virus, the spike protein. So every cell that it goes into, it takes over the machinery and you put out spike protein, spike protein, spike protein, spike protein. Well, it's a spike protein that does the damage everywhere. But there is something that they're saying, well, is it, are you shedding? It's not really shedding. The term of previous polio virus is shedding. This is you're transmitting something. And yes, by the way, the magnet thing does work. My husband did it with a colleague of his, and the silly magnet stuck to her arm. But again, maybe not everybody's getting the shot. I mean, maybe they're not getting the real thing.
Yeah.
So for the doctors noting that they were referring to various associates and patients who had taken the vaccine, what sorts of things do you recommend for people who have taken the vaccine in order to mitigate side effects?
So some of the things that I do at my center, I know Dr. Wolf's mentioning a vitamin or vitamin D, zinc, NAC, elderberry. Other things that I do, I use a peptide. If somebody's really sick, called thymosin alpha-1, and that helps to kind of really modulate or kind of control the immune system response, so it doesn't become overactive, but still make the body strong enough to clear it out. Because one of the biggest issues that we're seeing is more of that inflammatory reaction. And so the key becomes that to control that inflammatory reaction that's triggered by these spike proteins. And then these thymosin alpha-1 tend to be really good at that. And then I use another agent called methylene blue. And it's known as a photosensitizer, but it also is very fantastic in calming down that inflammatory reaction. But you can also use things like the NAC, like quercetin is another thing that's very good. They've also seen an herb called cistus. Another name for that is rock rose. They've seen that helps to kind of negate some of the effect of the spike proteins, and they also seen like dandelion. And what's interesting with both dandelion and cistus, or known as rock rose, is that they survive everywhere. It doesn't matter what you try to do, they'll still survive. So you can almost look at nature and see what will survive the biggest assault, and that tends to be the one that will help you to survive.
So cockroaches?
What's that?
So cockroaches?
Cockroaches, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they got something.
I understand that we don't really know how many people have the shot. A lot of people got shots without certificates they given or whatever they have to prove it. And there's supposed to be a lot of counterfeit receipts. Anybody know where you can get one?
The Babylon Bee is selling T-shirts that say, "I self-identify as vaccinated."
Oh my goodness.
And I think one of the things going to happen in the future is because they're going to recognize that is an issue, that there's a lot of counterfeiting going on. So then they're going to take the identification of who's had or not had the vaccine, probably be something that is part of the vaccine. So there'll be some kind of coding within you where you can pretty much kind of scan, and then they will know whether you had it or not.
I can tell you that even back during the administration, the legislatures were looking at legislation where they could implant something in your thumb. Do you remember that, Joanne?
Yeah.
And they said the wonderful thing about it is you go to the store and you can scan yourself, and then they'll just charge all of your groceries to you, and you don't have to worry about it. But they wanted to do that. By the way, the Jews, of course, were tattooed, and we found out during that whole debate that Native American Indians were tattooed in their gums. So they find different ways. Oh, and the other piece of legislation that came through in the 80s and 90s was to have your social security number somehow in your dental work, like if you had a partial or different places and stuff.
Liz, regarding the proper role of government, which was the caption for this discussion, I'm kind of curious what these panelists think about the propriety of a government, our government, which it seems clear now has spent money to create this Chinese monster.
I
understand the question?
I'm not sure.
Well, Dr. Fauci was involved in giving money to the Wuhan facility.
I don't know that any of us can answer that. That's the problem. You know, you've got people in this room that serve and that have served in political office. You've got doctors, scientists, and it makes everybody that's ever done this kind of thing question whether their colleagues or the pharmaceutical companies that people have relied on, or the people that are in positions of power that approve this stuff, whether they're just all colluding.
Well, it seems that they're all upset about it because Mr. Paul's bill got passed without any, 100% vote on it.
Well, maybe people are waking up. Yes, Dr. Wolf.
This is not just a U.S. agenda. Okay, this is happening worldwide. They want to bring the U.S. down because we're the strongest thing that stands with liberty and freedom. And that's why we're so hard hit. That's why you're not getting information about what's really true going on in Europe, for example. What's happening in Germany, and thousands and thousands of people are protesting. Same with England. You're not hearing anything about that. This is an international agenda to take over, to create a new world order. It's pretty well known on the Klaus Schwab and the New World, all of his World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization. They've got documents. They're all online. Research this stuff. So we're just having the fallout, and you're just seeing it on a small local level. But this is international.
These are the things that our founders, remember, that we studied, warned us against. They said to be vigilant, pay attention, and if you don't, that the people that like power will just amass more power, and you'll be beholden to it. So that's why we have to be educated. Yes.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Wolf for bringing up the Fleming video, the event 2021. It was an incredible expose. I actually have up here printed the petition that he recommended at the end to help him hold our government accountable, to stop the gain of function research, to do an investigation for the collusion and for these conflicts of interest and start an investigation. And he's working on lawsuits and he's working to gather that information. And that's because the government is the role of government, proper role of government. The government is we the people. And I think that's my answer in the sense to that question. And we the people need to make our voices heard. That's one way to make your voice heard. Petition. I mean, it's a written one, but I have it with me. If people want to find them afterwards, I have the petition with me. So the president wants to govern a little. One is to the House of Representatives, and the other one is to the Senate pro tem. So in the U.S. So those are the four ones that he recommended at the end of that video to help him fight the battle, because we need to fight together, and we the people need to make our voices heard locally, and nationally, and at the state level, and you all are the future of that, and it's going to take courage. I don't know how many read the Hunger Games. I don't know how many of you done the president like diversion or whatever, but you guys are the heroes that are rising up.
Thank you. Yes.
So one of the doctors says that the vaccines cause inflammation of the brain. What exactly is the
What's that? So it triggers the release of certain chemicals, what's called cytokines, that when they're overactive. So let's say when we're talking about the people that are dying from respiratory failures, you have SARS, has to do with the respiratory. So what happens then is that the lining of the lungs, becomes inflamed, which prevents then oxygen to be able to be transported through the lung membrane into the blood vessels, which means that, so the way they were trying to treat it then was to put them down on ventilators. So now we're trying to push air or oxygen into a sac that is not permeable, is not able to move oxygen into the bloodstream. So in essence, what you're doing is that you're just blowing out the lungs. So that is one area that is getting them inflamed. And then also along all the different blood vessels, blood vessel, that's why myocarditis, which is a inflammation of the heart muscle. They are seeing a lot of the young men especially are becoming impacted by this myocarditis after getting the vaccine. In fact, a dear friend of mine, she's a nurse practitioner at the cardiac unit here in St. Luke's, and she had 7 people, 7 in their 40s, men, prime of their life, no prior health history, and they all died from myocarditis within that week. And so she was curious about this. It was kind of right in the beginning of everything, and she saw that each one had received this COVID shot 3 to 4 days prior to, but obviously at that time, none of that was documented that it had any relationship. So it's these different chemicals that becomes overactive that can then cause a lot of inflammation pretty much anywhere in your body. But lungs and heart are common areas, and kidneys is another area.
Can it happen like years?
It can happen, yeah. So we're talking about blood vessels. I mean, obviously blood vessels are everywhere. Yeah. So it can then impact the neurological. You have a lot of people with neurological conditions. Had another, a coworker of mine or someone working at my center, a dear friend of hers is dealing with cancer, and she opted because of she needed to protect her immune system, opted to get the shot. And so now she's in liver failure, and so all the organs are starting to shut down. So it can go pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
So has anybody been cured of the shot? Has anybody been cured of the shot? Like come in? Unfortunately, there's no way.
The effects of the vaccination, I think.
From the effects of the vaccination? Yeah.
The shot.
Yeah.
She's wondering if they have a bad reaction. Is it treatable? Yeah.
Yes, we just mentioned there are some things that can be done, yes. But in terms of it working and creating more spike protein, there's like no off mechanism. No off button once you get the shot. Once you make the decision to do it, if you get the real stuff, then you don't know how it turns off. And we're studying things. They won't let us talk about us.
Any other questions?
I've got one, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So a little bit speculative, but the circles that you guys go around, I saw I think it was a TED Talk or an interview with Bill Gates, and he said there will be another pandemic. You know, in the past, we would have passed that off as, yeah, these things happen, they're cyclical, you know, whatever. Sure, in the future someday, but I mean, he was looking at the camera basically saying there will be another pandemic. So in one of your presentations, you kind of alluded to that. Are you hearing anything? I mean, the COVID numbers are coming down, and we know that they want to continue this agenda. Have you heard any kind of what's next scenarios?
You know, it's important to understand, until you have accurate testing, you can't say what's going on. So if there are a bunch of people who get sick in a few months, testing is not accurate, so we don't know what's causing the sickness. It could be vaccine reactions. It could be reactions to the shot. It could be problems when the yearly seasonal flu vaccine is given. There might be some cross reference. The coronavirus is not a new virus. It's the basis of our influenza vaccine. So, in the book Gravity's Rainbow, Thomas Pynchon said, if you can get people to ask the wrong question, the answer doesn't matter. And so until you can ask the question, what's causing the next wave of illness, unless you have scientific methodology and scientifically valid answers, we're just kind of chasing our tail.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that. I think what's the most concerning thing is you've heard something called antibody-dependent reaction, right? It's kind of like you're priming the immune system. So let's suppose that the people that got the jab, got the shot, have their immune system all primed right now, right? And they've created so much of this mRNA, this spike protein, it's everywhere in their body, and then they've got reactions to it. Actually, Dr. Sherry Tinton has done a whole presentation on the 24 different mechanisms of injury that spike protein actually causes all over your body. So let's just, and the antibody-dependent reaction is one of them. So let's say these people that have had the vaccine are now trying. Well, they get a normal coronavirus, which tends to circulate every fall and winter. And what happens? What could potentially happen? They die. Because that's what happened in all the animal studies. But we didn't do animal studies on this, did we? We didn't. They just completely ignored them. So that's what many of us are very concerned about is what's going to happen this fall and winter. And maybe that's the pandemic that's coming in. And what the spin you're going to hear is that, oh, it's a variant. It's a worse COVID. Oh my gosh, you need a booster. And I didn't tell you that they've got 85 shots and they've got 85 other vaccines in line to roll out to the public.
Christy, I believe that you wrote a publication a couple of months ago that addressed the issue of whether or not there actually is a pandemic. Am I mistaken?
Right. No, according to our emergency management plan, we did never have pandemic level numbers.
So there's terminology that's being messed with, and that's what typically the left does. They play with words. What was the word that was being used by the good doctor here? I just said, darn, I'm having a Biden moment.
Well,
it's gone, I'm sure.
Well, the thing is, there are terms, and I think all sides do it, quite frankly. They come up with terms, little catchphrases and stuff like that, and we fall into it. We've even said vaccine when we meant shot because we know that it's not a vaccine because we hear things over and over and over again. And so I think one of the things that's important is to get as much information as we can and to not allow somebody else to tell us how we need to talk. To not determine what the word is.
Since we're supposed to be talking about the proper role of government, I think it's important to note that nowhere in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights does it say that the government's responsible to keep you healthy.
That's right.
They're not responsible to keep you healthy. They're not responsible to put money in your checking account every 3 months or whatever, because they put you out of a job that they're not really supposed to do, or any of those things. The proper role of government here has just gotten so far out of hand that it's so far away from what our founders intended for it to be. So that's something I think that as citizens, we need to really look long and hard at. We see this when we talk about taxes. We're seeing it now when we talk about our health care. We have Medicaid expansion. We have a situation with this. We have property taxes. The list just goes on and on and on and on. So we have to really ask ourselves, what do I want the government to do for me? People will say, well, the shot's free. Let's just go get the shot because it's free. Well, no, it's not free because somebody somewhere is paying for it and it's your tax dollars in the end that are. Just because it's free, do you want the government to do it for you?
Well, that's what we were when we were discussing the difference between socialism and capitalism today. And when the Mayor of Mayor Richardson was telling us it's not the proper role of government to tell us who's essential and who's not essential, or what services or businesses are essential or not essential. So these are the things we've been talking about. And tonight, when you go to bed, that in your rooms and your coffee, talk these things over. And tomorrow, we're going to get more of this. So we've got 15 minutes over at, we can go to the gym, and we've got 15 minutes. We'll have some snacks and stuff, and then it's time to hit the dorms. Did you have one quick question?
I question slash more statement. Just kind of piggybacking off of Senator Zito there. One of the things that a lot of people are getting a lot of pressure from their employers to get the shot. They're being coerced, they're being threatened, they're being fired. And I'm working on a project trying to get those people together to work with their legislators. But even if they can't do that, I would recommend that they contact their own legislators and let them know what's going on, because there's a lot of pushback from some legislators saying that private businesses have private property rights and they can demand whatever they want of their employees.
I have a legal opinion.
Good.
I tried to be ready for what might come. So this is from an attorney that I asked to recheck, and they said, generally an employer in an at-will state like Idaho, I was an at-will state, an employer can fire you on the spot whenever, for whatever reason, we're not safe. They said conditions for workplace and terminate for violations of those conditions, so long as he does not discriminate, adhere to the age of what we're seeing, on the basis of and for the reason of membership in a protected class, race, sex, religion, etc. So I think that an employer in Idaho would be legally able to say that vaccinated employees do not have to wear a mask and that unvaccinated do. And that's how they're making the pressure. You don't get the vaccine, you have to wear the mask. So it's pure pressure to force people into getting the vaccine, which obviously they can do. So this person thinks that it's going to be a battle that we're going to have to win in the court of public opinion and not shop at places or do business with businesses that are requiring this of their employees, because money talks, and that is the one powerful political tool that we have of finance.
We can, we were having coffee with a friend in a coffee shop, and they poured my husband's coffee in a paper cup. And he said, could I have a mug, please? And they said, have you had the shot?
Where will tell us where it is, and we'll never go there.
It's I don't know the name of it, but it's still around the corner. Of course, you don't know the State Street. So we have to walk with our feet away from these things that we know are wrong, and we have to use our voices. And you know, these people that are involved, every one of us has a voice. Every one of us has an opinion. And we just need to stand for what's right.
I had a change yesterday. I went to the dentist to get my tooth pulled. They notified me an hour before and said, reminded me of the meeting. They said, when you come, please call or text and then wait in the car until we come and get you. My text went back really quickly and said, wait in the car, are you kidding? And then I got a text back and they said, well, are you here? And I said, no, I'm just reacting to, I don't remember the words I used. I'm challenging the fact that what you're doing doesn't even match the reality of what we know about this virus. Their response was, hey, Mr. Wilson, come on over, you can come right on in. And I talked on the phone with the gal in the office and she said, we have removed that from this automated text. So that made a little difference.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry. What I want you to do is students go over to the gym. You can